Eric Freshley here from Freshly Stream Games, and our long international nightmare is over. Xbox has finally closed on Activision Blizzard King just yesterday. It's finally a done deal. And I want to talk to you guys because it's almost 2 years ago now on this channel where I did almost an hour-long video. It's the longest video I've done where it's like tightly edited. And it was about Xbox doing a Smash Brothers game. And that was right soon after they had closed Bethesda. Activision Blizzard King wasn't even in the picture yet. So I kind of wanted to do a shorter one this time to just talk about how this acquisition makes that even more necessary, I believe. I've been seeing that all over Twitter today too, so I'm not the only one. And of course, some people, actually some prominent journalists whose name I won't mention, but they started mocking the idea, and I think that's silly. They have the roster, they have the history. They're coming up on 25 years here pretty soon of Xbox history, and actually they go back even further in gaming than that because they, Age of Empires and Flight Sim before that. But it's time, right? So just to recap it, and I'll link it too in the description, and also put a tag up on this side one, up above me, to link you to that old video, to where I really go into detail. But my idea for it it doesn't play like Smash Brothers, because I think just trying to rip off Smash won't necessarily work. Maybe it will, but we've seen some others try and fail at that. I think they should make it like Power Stone 2, the Dreamcast game, if you check that out. But that is a long video where I talk about a whole host of characters from Xbox and Bethesda, even some third-party guests that are possible, some indie characters. This is just going to be kind of an update of new possibilities that have entered the fold since then. If you like it, please subscribe to this channel, Freshly Stream Games, because I do podcast here every 2 weeks with Hunter Davenport, and also I stream to this channel a lot. We're gonna probably start the Halo Infinite campaign, which I've never actually played. Me and Lisa are gonna be co-oping that pretty soon. So please subscribe to the channel.
Check this out. Music player in my chest. It's powering up my new robot arm. Whoa. It's making everything sync up with the beat. Let's rock. This is awesome.
This little batch of characters here that I want to talk about are not necessarily Activision Blizzard King, but have kind of entered the fold since the last video. And just to be clear, I'm not cutting down and making like a tight roster right now. I'm talking about all the possibilities. It's somebody else's job if they decide to make the game to cut it down. I'm just kind of laying everything on the table just to get the mind reeling and demonstrate that, yeah, there's a lot of opportunity here with this game. First and foremost, Try from Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush, we didn't even know existed when I did the last video, and then they revealed it and released it all on the same day. And that character is the most obvious character in the world for a game like we're talking about. He's a melee fighter who does a lot more damage when he attacks on the beat. Doing it on a beat, they probably have to simplify it for this kind of game because he couldn't exactly match the music the way he does in his game. But definitely they can make it so if his attacks are evenly paced, he does more damage. And people love that game for good reason. It's one of Xbox's brightest new IPs that they revealed in years. Just a huge success all around. Ace from Towerborn. When we did the last video, we only knew it as Project Belfry. Well, now the game's been revealed and it's going to be out next year, pretty early next year, and it looks fantastic. Again, since that game's from a brawler, this is just a perfect candidate. South of Midnight is a game we don't know a whole lot about yet. Again, and when we talked about this 2 years ago, it was only known as Project Midnight. Now we've gotten our first actual look at it. We need to know more about what the character is. Matter of fact, I don't even know her name. I think it's Hazel, but we need to know more about what her abilities are before we put her in a game like this. But that IP looks unique and interesting. Clockwork Revolution is a steampunk inspired RPG coming from In Exile that has a art style unlike any other Xbox IP, so that would need to be represented. And then some third-party guests that Actually, I talked about Hollow Knight in the last video, but because Hollow Knight was on Game Pass at the time, but now it's been revealed that Silksong is going to be on Game Pass day one. So I would definitely, even more than Hollow Knight himself, I would put Hornet in this game from Silksong. Of course, still don't know when Silksong's coming out, but it'll be Game Pass when it does. And Persona has now not only come on Xbox, but also it's been on Game Pass. As a matter of fact, Persona 3 Remake and Persona 5 Tactica are going to be there day one, as well as Persona 5 Royale's already there. Like, the Persona Xbox relationship has just come out of nowhere and come on strong. So, Joker, just like he is in Smash, I would also add him to this game. Or the Persona 3 protagonist. I don't know who that is, because I'm not a Persona person myself, but possibly that as well. One of those two. And we did talk about Like a Dragon in the last video, but that relationship has only deepened. So now I think Ichiban and Kiryu are shoo-ins, whereas before they were long shots, now they're necessities, because they've added even more Like a Dragon games onto Game Pass, and Like a Dragon Gaiden's going to be there day one, plus Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, that was on Xbox's E3 stage, well, Summer Game Fest stage. Like a Dragon and Xbox are tight now. But let's move on to actual Activision Blizzard King. These are the ones you're all here to see, right? This is the purpose of this video, mostly.
All right, that's where we're in position.
And of course, the first one is Call of Duty. Now, Call of Duty, actually, like a lot of the franchises we're going to talk about, I must admit to you, I don't have a lot of personal experience with, but I did do my research on this. And I believe the Call of Duty rep that would be best would be Simon Ghost Riley. It really comes down to Ghost, Price, or Soap, from what I can tell. And I'm mostly going with Ghost because of his look, is very unique. However, as we talked about in the last video, we do want a game like this to have premium skins, which would change the voice lines, just like Bowser Jr. in Smash Bros. Change the voice lines, change what the announcer calls them, and basically, you know, almost like Echo Fighters without any actual gameplay differences. And they would be microtransactions or possibly earnable. And I do think Price and Soap would be premium skins for Ghost. And maybe some other Call of Duty characters. Like I said, I don't know the franchise extremely well, but those seem to be the big three. I also talked about in the last video adding a ship from Geometry Wars as a playable character, and that was before Geometry Wars was owned by Microsoft. But as of yesterday, it is. So now a ship is a necessity, as well as a Geometry Wars stage and music. But I think you have to make a ship a playable character. That would be one of the most unique characters on the roster, almost like a Game & Watch type of situation. Cole White from Gun, kind of forgotten series now, but it's now owned by Microsoft. Hexen is Phil Spencer's, apparently one of his favorites. He wore that shirt out on the Summer Game Fest stage. Now, who would be the character from that? There's a couple options, but I think I would actually go with the villain, Korax. A very unique look, very unique powers. Captain Nathaniel Renko from Singularity, that will also might have similar abilities to the Clockwork Revolution main character, because both those games play with time manipulation. Here's one we haven't seen in a while, Rikimaru from Tenchu. I bet a lot of people have forgotten about that, but that's an old Activision franchise, used to be insanely popular and has died off recently, but in a game like this is a good opportunity to bring them back. Detective Nicholas Kang from True Crime Streets of LA. That's another one that has not been seen in a while. Crash Bandicoots. Oh man. Crash Bandicoot would probably be on the box art right next there to Master Chief and Steve and Dovahkiin. If only to stick it a little bit in Sony's face, honestly, and to, you know, just make a stamp and say, hey, this is ours now. We know you haven't thought about this as an Xbox character in the past. Well, it is now, and it is going forward. So this is our mark. And Crash can have some premium skins, of course, including the fake Crash Bandicoot, including Coco Bandicoot and the fake Coco Bandicoot. But that's not the only one from Crash. Dingo Dial, as well as Dr. Neo Cortex and Tawna Bandicoot have all been playable characters in the most recent one. I think Neo Cortex for sure is necessary, but I wouldn't be surprised if they go with all of them eventually over time. Again, we are talking about this as a live service game that would get added to, you know, as long as people support it. So over time, it could happen.
All right, you ready, Jetpack?
Oh, yeah. Call me back.
What are you guys doing? We're combining powers.
Just like you Swap Force guys.
Check it out. Barf and flight. I'm flying!
Watch out!
Barfing.
Don't hit my...
Skylanders. Its time in the sun seems to have passed, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does come back as a toyless variation at some point, because Xbox does seem to need family games. I don't know much about Skylanders, but I did do a little research to find out the most popular ones, and it does seem like Drobot, Gilgrunt, Jetpack, and Stealth Elf are kind of the 4 big ones. So any of those are an option. And again, like Killer Instinct, that is a roster that you could tap forever. There's a million Skylanders. But where did Skylanders come from? Spyro the Dragon. This is another one like Crash Bandicoot. Used to be heavily associated with PlayStation, and now that it's under Xbox, I think that's one that they want to put a strong association with and let people know from this time going forward, Spyro is Xbox. So Spyro himself, of course, would be in the game, as well as possibly Cinder as an enhanced skin for him. And as well as you could add Ripto and Spyro's friend Hunter. But don't forget, Activision also owned Sierra. Now, that catalog we have not seen in a long time, but that includes King's Quest. And I would put Sir Graham from that game as a classic character, a real throwback to, because obviously this game, like all Xbox games, would be on PC as well. So it's a nod to that. As while we're talking about Sierra-owned games, also Glitch from Metal Arm's Glitch in the System. Pitfall Harry, of course, like that's a classic one, almost like a Game & Watch type character that you would need to have in here. And finally, from Activision proper, would be Alex Mercer from Prototype. It's another franchise we've not seen in a while, but there's a version on Xbox One. I bet it's going to hit Game Pass soon, so there's a tie-in.
We have paid the price for sharing this world, and we have forgotten what makes us strong.
Let's get to the Blizzard possibilities here. Of course, I think Warcraft is probably the biggest one. World of Warcraft and Warcraft Prime. Again, this is another series I have no actual firsthand experience with. But even as somebody without firsthand experience, even I know many of the characters. That's just how popular of a game it once was, and probably will be again soon. I wouldn't be surprised if World of Warcraft comes to Xbox console, and that gives it a whole nother second lease on life. Sylvanas Windrunner seems to be the big face, and I've even seen in some of my research, a lot of commentators pissed off about how hard she's pushed by Blizzard. So that means she's the one they would pick, of course. But also, Thrall is pretty iconic and has a big hammer. Like, that's necessary for a game like this. If you're a character with a big hammer, you got a real good chance of getting in. Also, Gen Greymane can turn into a wolf. Jaina Proudmoore and Lily Stormstout. Lily doesn't seem to be the most popular character, but she has a look that would just make her stand out among this roster. And finally, the Lich King. He got a whole expansion named after him. He got a story arc that lasted, I think, through several games and several expansions. I think that came from the Warcraft strategy game and then bled into World of Warcraft. So he's a big, big deal. But also some throwbacks from Blizzard include the Lost Vikings and Blackthorn.
My children, the lords of hell are coming to devour our world.
Hell is coming. Hell is coming. Resist her temptation.
Let's move into Diablo. Diablo's a tough one to actually pick a character from, because if you take a cue from Heroes of the Storm, they actually invented some characters because you make your own character in Diablo. So they like invented a barbarian and put her in Heroes of the Storm, and they did it for a necromancer and several others. And we can do that in this game, of course. We could even use those same characters. But also we could just take Diablo himself as a big bruiser character. Also Tyrael, who's an archangel in the game. Neither of those are playable, but they're definitely recognizable. And finally, the Butcher's another one, although he might be too similar to Diablo as far as just being a big bruiser character. And speaking of Heroes of the Storm, that game actually, while it was mostly a best of Blizzard, it actually had 2 original characters that we have to be on the table: Orphea and Quira.
Make no mistake. War is coming. With all its glory. And all its horror. Mr. Findlay, your freedom awaits. Hell, it's about time.
StarCraft has been one that actually Phil Spencer has named as a possible game to come back, and Jez Gordon has even reported that there might be a StarCraft thing happening. Fans want it back, and this is the perfect opportunity to get it back in the public consciousness. And the Queen of Blades, Sarah Kerrigan, has got to be the first name on the list. You know, who wouldn't want to see the Queen of Blades against Jack of Blades from Fable? Like, that just writes itself as a rival battle if they did that kind of thing in this game. But also Jim Raynor and Terra Nova. Terra Nova almost got her own game, if longtime fans remember that.
You know, the world could always use more heroes.
And then we move into Overwatch. Overwatch, just like Skylanders and just like Killer Instinct, there is no main character. Well, there's one main character, but mostly it's a roster of 1 million main characters. So those possibilities are almost endless. And I know Overwatch's best days are kind of behind it now. But I'm hoping that under Microsoft, they're able to pump more resources in it and turn things around there. And either way, even if, you know, the public sentiment on it is turned, it's still a very, very popular game. And I don't know, it's tough to narrow down the cast of Overwatch, but obviously, first and foremost, Tracer. Like, she's number 1. But after that, it gets a little more complicated. Reinhardt and Genji come to mind because you do want some more melee-based characters. This is, after all, a brawling game, and we already have a lot of characters with guns between Master Chief and Doomslayer and Marcus Phoenix. So, you know, melee-based characters are good. The problem with Reinhardt is Thrall is already a hammer character, and in the first episode where we talked about this hypothetical game, we also talked about Pavardi from Outer Worlds, who's another hammer character. So that's starting to overlap a lot with Reinhardt. And Genji's the same story with Ryu Hayabusa, as well as Tenchu character Rikimaru. So we're getting a lot of overlap there, so they might have to sit out, or maybe they could be enhanced skins for one of the aforementioned characters, possibly. But also, as far as melee-based characters, there's Doomfist, Brigitte, and Junker Queen. And I actually might like Junker Queen because she has a knife and an axe, as well as a shotgun, which is not melee, but it's short-ranged. But also, she would represent the Overwatch 2 era, because it is good to, just like we talked about, maybe put it in Hisako to represent the new era of Killer Instinct. You might want a character that represents the new era of Overwatch.
Sweet.
And Candy Crush. Look, I don't like it, but it's a big, big deal. As a matter of fact, it's the reason this whole acquisition happened in the first place. So Tiffy from Candy Crush would 100% be in. Possibly the Jelly Queen as well. And I do think having a character from a puzzle game like Candy Crush could possibly have an interesting moveset, even if I have no affinity for the character whatsoever. And the last character I want to mention is Kate Archer from No One Lives Forever. Now this one's complicated. The rights to No One Lives Forever are infamously tied up with several characters, but one of the publishers on the game was Sierra, which belongs to Activision and now of course belongs to Xbox. But there's several other characters who have also been tied up with No One Lives Forever. Those rights have never been quite cleared up, but I do think that Microsoft is maybe more inclined to get their lawyers involved and figure out if they actually own it or not than Activision ever was. You know, you think about how they actually got 2 Human on Game Pass, which seems like that would have been legally impossible, but they figured it out. And maybe they can figure out a way to get Kate Archer back in No One Lives Forever back on the table, and maybe they can also remaster that game. But that's just wishful thinking. Let's talk about stages a little bit, because there are many Activision games that don't feel like they would be great as a fighter, but definitely should be represented in the game in some form, and a stage would be excellent. And even some that I want to talk about, we dabbled in the idea last time we talked about this game of mashup stages, and I actually want to talk about some of those specifically, because we mentioned it would be a good idea, but we didn't get specific, and I have a couple here that I do want to talk about. And that first one being a mashup of Crash Bandicoot with Banjo-Kazooie. I see the stage being at the Bandicoot house, Crash's house, and about halfway through the match, Gruntilda from Banjo-Kazooie comes in and invades and lays waste to the place, and you have to fight around her. By the same token, another 2 pair of platformers, one from Rare and one from Activision, Spyro and Conker. This would be on Artisan's Homeworld, which is the first level of Spyro. And eventually it gets invaded by the Great Mighty Pooh, and then you have to avoid him while continuing the fights. I see the hangar from Tony Hawk as a playable stage, and then halfway through the match, the fight transfers to be on top of one of the airplanes in the hangar, and it takes off and goes in the air because this is a mashup with Flight Sim. Tony Hawk and Flight Sim mashed up together. Dance Central and Guitar Hero. I don't know how exactly that would work, but you know, when you have to avoid the things flying on stage in a Dance Central match, and then all of a sudden the Note Highway from Guitar Hero comes in, and you still got to continue the fight around. Fallout crossed with Diablo. Maybe that's new. Maybe that's Megaton, and it's invaded by some Diablo characters. Forza and StarCraft. I see how you fight on top of some Forza cars in the middle of a race, and then all of a sudden some StarCraft ships come on and start shooting the cars that you're fighting on top of. Iron Brigade and Overwatch. I see Diva's team of mechs, the Korean mech team that she leads, fighting against the Iron Brigade robots. Nuketown from Call of Duty. But then, let's talk about some stages that don't have playable characters. So these are games we haven't talked about yet. Hearthstone. Hearthstone was huge for a hot minute. And while yes, it is tied to Warcraft, I also think it has made a name on its own enough that it would need its own stage, one where you are avoiding cards that are being played on a Hearthstone table. Arcanum of Steamworks and Magic Obscura is an old Sierra title that is a cult classic. Zork, of course, an absolute classic. Gabriel Knight, Phantasmagoria, Interstate 76, and Freddy Farkas Frontier Pharmacist, and I swear to God, I'm not making that game up. Most of those are old Sierra games, but they're all classic PC games, and that's an audience that you would want to give a wink and a nod to. Something we did not talk about in the first video that I do want to bring up, because I do think it could be a big part of the live service. It could be a big part of the rewards that you earn from battle passes, or even microtransactions in some cases. I know that's dirty to say sometimes, but hey, it's a part of life in a live service game. Our announcers. Mortal Kombat does this. There's a couple other games that do this, where you can replace the announcer in the game. And this is a good way to get characters in this game who maybe aren't fighters necessarily, but still great characters, as well as, announcers from other Xbox franchises and Activision franchises that could cross over into this one if you pay up or earn them in a battle pass or whatever it may be. And I'll talk specifically about some of my ideas. The Dark Queen from Battletoads, Jay and Vela from Broken Age, Deckard Cain from Diablo, Dr. Hayden from Doom, Sebastian Castanulis from The Evil Within, Hammer, Reaver, Teresa from Fable, Nick Valentine from Fallout, the GPS lady from Forza Horizon who talks to you through your car,
200 yards, you will arrive at your destination.
Colonel Hoffman or Queen Mira from Gears of War. Those are the multiplayer announcers depending if you play the COG side or the Locust side in some of the original Gears of War games. 343 Guilty Spark from Halo, of course Cortana from Halo, Sergeant Johnson from Halo, as well as just the multiplayer announcer from Halo, the one who says, you know,
Double kill, killing spree.
make him also do the same in this game if you want that as an announcer pack. 808 and or Peppermint from Hi-Fi Rush, the Killer Instinct announcer, Goro Majima from Like a Dragon. It's the only third-party one we've talked about so far on this list. Garrus from Mass Effect. If you remember in the first video, we talked about adding Garrus, Tali, Liara, and Rex all to the game, but because Garrus is the most popular companion in Mass Effect, but his moveset would be kind of boring compared to those other ones, so maybe as an announcer would be a better fit for him, as well as Harbinger from Mass Effect.
I am assuming direct control.
The Overwatch announcer.
Attackers incoming in 60 seconds.
Maybe Junkrat from Overwatch as well. He's got a fun voice. Elvis from Perfect Dark if he's not a playable character. Ford Crawler from Psychonauts. The Quake 3 Arena announcer.
Welcome to Quake 3 Arena. Prepare to fight.
The guy who narrates all the Sea of Thieves trailers.
So get ready to experience all new adventures, earn renown, and reap the rewards with Sea of Thieves.
Larice Davis from State of Decay, because in the last video we talked about maybe doing one of the special zombies is a better representative for a playable character in State of Decay, so Larice Davis would need to fit in somewhere else. Tyler and Allison from Tell Me Why. General Snake Vargas from Wasteland, and Anya from Wolfenstein, who is BJ Blazkowicz's wife. So yeah, that's it. This is a shorter one just to add on to the last video because this Activision Blizzard King opens up a whole lot more possibilities for what we already talked about. This just strengthens the point, I think, of why a game like this is absolutely necessary. And I really hope Xbox gets on board with it. You know, now they got studios that I'm hoping they pull off Call of Duty like High Moon and Beanox and Toys for Bob. Maybe one of them could tackle this, although I still say Iron Galaxy is the best bet. But anyway, please subscribe. We do a podcast here called Crossover Attack every 2 weeks, as well as streams beyond that, and just other fun stuff like this video here and there. Also, though, I've worked out some graphics about this very concept. I've done a, box art, which I'll put here. I've done a character select screen, which I've done right here. And even more fun, I think, I did this series of like 70s and 80s wrestling posters that I call Xbox Championship Fights, of just kind of putting fights together of Xbox characters, because like I said, I really think this is a money idea. And anyway, all this stuff is on a new DeviantArt page that I've started, so I'll put that link in the description before. Check that out, please. Till next time.